So yeah, that ties nicely up the sort of exercise and movement thing. Obviously, massively important. Again, do your own research on this stuff. Don't take our words for it. We're just talking about the things that we've come across and have worked for us. But the exercise and movement alone, that can't fix our issues, if you like, because food and diet and nutrition are massively important too. I once heard this sort of really thought-provoking anecdote's the wrong word, but somebody was saying about, if you think the size you were when you were a baby and the size that you are now, all the living tissue that existed in you as a baby, none of that probably exists now. You know, everything's regenerated, everything's grown. So where did all that growth come from? It came from what you put in your mouth, what you ate. So you're literally, when you're eating, you're choosing what to build yourself out of. And dietary advice out there, it's a minefield. You'll find somebody recommending anything. You know, there's just so many different variables and diets and stuff like that. And I think the simplest way that I look at it is just, you know, can I minimize the amount of processed food I eat? So anything that comes in a tin or packet and has a list of ingredients versus something that, you know, your ancestors would recognize. So, you know, a bit of salmon, an avocado, whatever. These things aren't coming with ingredients lists. They're not made in factories. And I know it's more complicated than that. You know, there's issues of factory farmed animals and stuff. That's a whole other discussion. But I think if you could just cut down on the processed foods overall, that already is just a huge win to your diet and nutrition.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what we said at the start about how whatever we're doing it's not working. I remember living in America and driving past, you go down a main street and it'd just be like Burger King, Whataburger, KFC, McDonald's, and all these different things, right? And you see like a picture of like, you know, 6 chicken nuggets or whatever for like $1.50, and you're just thinking about like, dude, like how is that possible to sell that for that price, right? That's strange. And it's the realization, and this is what I keep on trying to say. Like, it's really, really hard for us, myself included. I'm talking about myself more, and I'm not saying it like, oh, I've rose above this, and I'm so woke, and you guys need to catch up. It's not that. It's a constant thing for all of us. It's like a realization, and it's not like being like a kind of, you know, guy with a tinfoil hat on and saying everyone's out to get us. But I think we need to really understand the nature of the world that we live in. Not everyone in the world, you know, there's thousands, millions of people around the world who don't know when their next meal is going to be, and it's insulting to them the things that we do as part of our normal day-to-day. Like, people would die to be in our positions and things like that. But I think it's this realization, especially when it comes to the stuff that we put in our body, that the majority of the things that we're getting bombarded with on a daily basis are no good for us whatsoever, right? I think that's a step of realization that we need to make. You know, I just scoffed some pizza for my dinner, right? It's not good for me. It's not good at all. But I'd like to think that, you know, a long enough timeline, like you mentioned, the soccer team, if you win more games than you lose, you're going to be, you know, there or thereabouts at the end of the season. So if we talk about processed food, you need to define what is meant by processed food. And a processed food is anything that we as human beings have altered from its natural state. So even if you take like a grain of wheat, even before anything else happens, that's probably been modified to be how it is by us. All right, and probably the easiest and most overt way to think about that is probably like a dog, right? We've genetically altered dogs over the course of thousands of years to do the things that we want them to do, right? So it's kind of the same thing with grains, is that we've taken wheat and we've crossbred it and adapted it and modified it to do certain things. And quite often those certain things aren't for our particular personal health. It's so that the bread that we make out of that wheat has a certain texture or a certain color to make it more aesthetically pleasing to us, or to make it fit more within a norm. And even if you just take bread as example, bread is not something that is naturally occurring. So that in itself is a processed food. And there's an argument, there's a theory that people have put together that is you should have a whole food diet. And what does a whole food diet mean? It means stuff that just naturally occurs. We're consuming stuff that naturally occurs, and that's better for us because that's what's been around for thousands of years, and that's what we've hundreds of thousands of years. That's what we've consumed for thousands of years. That's what we should consume. Therefore, our health is better if we have these things that naturally occur. You never see a fucking donut in the wild, right? So that's a processed food. I'm not saying that donuts aren't nice. They are nice. But this idea of that anything which is processed, even like if you take like rolled oats, like a lot of people have porridge, a lot of people have oatmeal, those kind of things, right? That you might just think, no, that's not a processed food. Well, it is, because if they roll it, like rolled oats that they put through these giant rollers and crush it, it changes the structure of that oat. And therefore it changes the rate of absorption when we consume it, and it changes how our body reacts to it in a mostly negative way. So that's important to understand, this idea about, like you saying, like the things that you consume become you, but also this understanding that there's loads of stuff that we kind of presume are good because we've grown up with them, but you know what? They're not, because just look around again, like look in the mirror or look around. It's not good for us. And yeah, that's that idea of whole foods, man, eating whole foods instead of something that's processed.
Yeah, I think one of the things as well that leads me on to is the topic of insulin and blood sugar and processed foods, because you've touched on this already. So if you take, and we're going to talk a bit about intermittent fasting and stuff like that shortly, but if we think about a very conventional thing, a very typical thing in the Western world, it's to get up in the morning and have a bowl of breakfast cereal. And I grew up, I loved breakfast cereal, absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
If you put a bowl down in front of me now, I would love it just the same. But I mean, what's happening when you're eating these highly refined carbohydrates? So this is my layman's understanding of insulin.
Oh, come on, mate.
So we're eating a food like that, refined carbohydrates. They cause a spike in your blood sugar. And when this happens, your pancreas secretes insulin, and insulin then tells your body to store all of that extra sugar or energy as fat. Either that, or you're going to go out and do all the exercise that most of us don't do. And, if you eat this stuff a lot, then that's obviously a problem, because your body's just constantly saying, we'll store that. And it's an evolutionary thing, because hundreds of thousands of years ago, we didn't know where our next meal was coming from. So if we had the opportunity to gorge on something like this and store some fat, that could see us through weeks and weeks. Whereas we know that in modern society, our next tin of Iron Brew, our next Mars bar is never far away. So we're never going to get to that stage where we're going to rely on all that other energy. So there's no need to be storing all that fat. So, very, very layman's explanation, insulin and blood sugar. But I think it's important to sort of think about that the next time you're reaching for a donut or a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, it's this. So there's carbohydrate, protein, and fat, which are the main energy sources that are used by our body, right? And I think naturally we're lazy bastards, and I think lazy bastards takes a negative rap. I like to think that we're smart workers. It's like, if I don't have to do that, why should I do it, right? You think about a lion. You go on a safari and you see a whole pride of lions. You probably see them just lying underneath a tree, right, hanging out. You don't ever go, look at those lazy fucking lions just lying under a tree. I paid thousands of pounds to come over and just lying under a tree. Get some work done. Go and do something like you don't see it, right? Because they are conserving energy. They are saying, well, I don't need to go and do that. So what am I talking about? And so there's carbohydrates. Body will always use carbohydrates first, because in carbohydrates, the simplest form, it doesn't really need to expend any energy to use that energy source. So it'll always use carbohydrates first, right? And
it's like, just to briefly interject, it's like if you've got a fire burning and you put paper on it, it's going to burn really quickly but really fast. Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And so the problem we have is that we've started buying and having all of these highly processed foods, which give us a lot of paper for the fire, as you mentioned. So it burns really bright, but then it's gone. And then you start having to have like half 10 snack, and you do the same thing. A massive spike in your insulin level. I'm pumped, and then it's like your insulin level spikes, then massive dip, spike, massive dip, spike, massive dip, and that's not good for us as human beings. And as you mentioned, insulin is really important because it moves glucose into the cells so the cells can use it. But it also tells your body to store any excess glucose as fat. So insulin is really important for us to transfer that, the energy from the bloodstream into the cells. The analogy that I use when I've kind of spoken to people about this is that imagine getting like a takeaway meal delivered to your door for every meal. And so you get it, you eat it, you're like, I'm done now. I'll put the rest in the fridge for later. And then, 3 hours later, another meal arrives and you eat as much as you can. Oh, it's tasty. I'll save that for later. And so you're constantly putting things into the fridge. But because stuff is always being delivered and always being delivered and always being delivered, you don't ever get round to eating the leftovers from the fridge because you're always getting a new meal through the door. And that's kind of the same thing with like kind of how like this 3 meals a day thing. Like it's been ingrained into me, like three square meals a day. And now recently it's been like snacks. So you need to have snacks as well as snacks, and it's like, but I don't think I think a lot of people are doing it now, and more people are doing it. But it's like, is that actually good though? It can't be, because like I said, going back to the thing I said at the start, is like just look around your neighborhood, look at yourself, look in the mirror, maybe, and it's like it's not right. It's obviously not right because we're not how we're supposed to be. And so, that's a kind of the lamest term. I think you're banging the nail on the head about this idea of like insulin spikes. Insulin is a response to when we're eating food, especially with a certain amount of carbohydrate in there. And is fasting something that you do? Because if you kind of go back to what I was saying about lions, you see in the wild, you don't see them eating 3 meals a day. You don't see a lion going, you know what, mate, what's really important? 3 meals a day. You've got to have 3 meals a day, because they simply don't have access to that. And
I don't famine, literally.
Yeah. So is intermittent fasting something that you do?
Yeah, I would say that probably the best thing I ever did was start skipping breakfast. And I know straight away that is the sort of thing that if your mum heard you saying, she'd be outraged, because there's this thing in Western society, and it's a marketing term, an ancient marketing term. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, completely meaningless and baseless, and designed to sell products. But our ancestors didn't get up and have breakfast. They went and found it, and that took probably till lunchtime to do. They certainly weren't sitting down a bowl of Cheerios or anything like that. So, and I would think to myself, if I spoke to 6 year ago me, who used to get up and have 4 Weetabix and was starving by 10 a.m, the concept of skipping breakfast would horrify me, because if I was that hungry at 10 a.m. after 4 Weetabix, how hungry would I be if I hadn't eaten anything at all? And the answer is not hungry at all, because it's there's all sorts of different complex digestive processes taking place or not taking place depending on when you've ate and what you've ate. And, I have a bit of coffee with healthy fats in it in the morning, and that sees me through to lunchtime. So I try very hard. I don't try very hard at all. It's just habit now. But I'll generally eat within a 8-hour window. So I'm conscious of keeping my meals within that window. And another thing that I'm doing is ensuring that I'm not eating anything maybe 2 hours before I go to bed as well, because there's a whole other thing there where, if you're going to bed digesting food, that's something your body's concentrating on when it should be in your brain doing important stuff up there. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I during the week, I do similar to what you do sometimes, which is like a 16-8. So you have 16 hours where you're not eating and 8 hours where you are eating. And that you're not eating straight for like 8 hours. Like 8 hours, oh brilliant, that sounds good. I can eat just 8 hours straight. So you have like you confine in your eating to like an 8 hour period. What I've tried to do more often is just do 1 meal a day, where I have like a 1 or a 2 hour eating window. That's what I've done. I've done that at least for the last month. So for the last month, I've just had 1 meal a day. And what I've noticed is that for the first 3 days, I didn't have anything other than water. So we talk about diet. The first thing I did when I wanted to change my diet, right? Because I remember saying this, right, is that I feel like I've been fighting against stuff that my parents told me for ages. So I remember like when the same thing as you, like you'd skip breakfast. Like I get up for school or whatever, and mom would be like, what you had for your breakfast? And I'd be like, I'm not hungry. She's like, you got to have something. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm not hungry. You got to have something. It'd be like a fight. And
Most
it comes from a
important meal
good
of the
place.
day.
Yeah, it comes from a good place. Don't get me wrong, but it's just
Yeah.
like I'm like, why? I seem to have been fighting my nature or the things that my body's been telling me for a long time. And it's probably about 5 years ago. Maybe a little bit more now, where it was like I started listening to my body a little bit more, because I think you go on. I think I'd gone on a holiday. I think I'd gone on like an all-inclusive holiday, which is where like you can drink as much as you want, eat as much as you want, and I was just like really sick. Because it's like, well, one, I'm tight with my money, so I wanted to kick the ass out of it. So it's like, right, well, if I'm paying for this food, I'm going to eat every fucking meal, right? Because I paid for it, so I'm going to eat every meal. And I did, and I felt really, really sick. And I remember thinking, like, I just don't feel very well. I mean, because I didn't really ever eat 3 meals a day, like a lot. And it was like, I just want to start listening to my body more. So I just wouldn't eat breakfast, and it would have no effect on me. And then I stopped eating lunch as well, because, you know, I'm quite active at work. So I'd have like lunch, and if I didn't have like a certain thing for lunch, I felt like quite lethargic. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna stop having lunch. I don't want to feel that way. And so I started like fasting without really thinking about doing fasting. And actually, what I've noticed through doing it is that I don't get hunger cravings. I don't really get that hungry. It's like I just feel like my energy level is just constant. It's like it's just a constant level of energy. And I've found that as I've been doing it, it's a lot easier just to abstain from certain things and go, you know what, it's not worth it. And one of the things I've touched on that a lot previously is that I started like thinking about, is that food worth it or not? Is it worth breaking my fast over? So like any bread-based cake, nah, no chance. I'm not going to break my fast over that, because it's not nice enough, if that kind of makes sense. So I definitely, for the last month, and I've done it a lot previously, but just 1 meal a day, and that just fits in with me. And a lot of people, especially at work, think that I'm mental for doing that, but it's not about that. It's about it's just what works for me. It doesn't seem too difficult. It doesn't seem like I'm making huge sacrifices, if that makes sense. And it's just seeing this bigger picture. And it's like, do you really, like, just because someone offers you a fucking chocolate at work, like, doesn't mean you have to actually eat that, right? It doesn't mean you have to eat that. So yeah, I do fasting Monday to Friday, and it's either 16/8 regularly, but naturally I've just fallen into this just eating 1 meal a day, and I still have my eating window between 4:30 and 6:30, or 4:30 and 5:30, and it's honestly, once I've got into it and once I've kind of broke down those barriers, and I've found it's not actually being hungry, it's just the ritual of eating. And it's the habit of eating. Yeah. And actually, once you've gone through that kind of the withdrawal of, like, you know, the glucose withdrawal, and you're teaching your body to live in a different way, and you're teaching your body to access its energy in a different way. Like, once I've acclimatized to that, it's like, it's liberating. I just don't feel a slave to it. And I don't feel like I'm eating just because it's eating time. I feel like I'm just doing more of what comes naturally to me, as opposed to, you know, just what everyone else is doing. I don't know. Strange.
I think as well, like, well, a couple of things there. First and foremost, often our supposed hunger patterns, I would challenge anyone next time they feel hungry, go and have a pint of water. And if you're still hungry after that, fair enough, go and, you know, have your bag of crisps or whatever. But more often than not, you're just thirsty, and your body's got it. The signal's got a bit confused. So I think there's a lot of stuff around hydration as well. I wanted to touch on the term fasting as well, because it's got such a negative connotation. Almost nobody, myself included, come across the word fasting for the first time and didn't roll their eyes and think, what a terrible idea. But if you think about it, it's not natural for our bodies to be digesting food all day. Like, digesting food's a stressor on your body. We weren't designed to be constantly eating, constantly digesting. So we talked about 8-16. You could even do 12-12, and that's a fast. You know, you could start there if you're interested in getting into it. And I think one of the other things with fasting as well is, and I immediately thought this, you know, if I'm not eating, I'm going to start my body's going to start breaking itself down, eating itself. We think of, like, you know, hunger strikers or concentration camp survivors. But when you look into, well, there's a couple of things there. So I don't know if this is the exact stat, but even long-term fasting you would only start eating into your muscles, catabolizing, I think they call it, if you had less than 7% body fat, I think it is. I'd have to look this up. And for reference, an elite athlete has about 10% body fat. So again, don't quote me on that. I'd need to reaffirm that stat. And the other thing as well with fasting is the term, and this is a whole topic of its own, but the term autophagy. Dan, are you familiar with that?
Oh, yes, mate. Yeah, go on. But you tell me about it.
So autophagy, very simple, again, layman's terms, which is a common thread for me. Cell recycling. So, there's no new nutrients coming in just now. Let's take a moment to look at all the cells in our body, these misfolded proteins, they call them. So we're constantly spitting out different copies of cells, and your body just basically takes that opportunity to do a bit of spring cleaning. Again, reported to be very good for just keeping things like future cancers and stuff in check, because you're getting rid of all that crap. And, that alone's not going to save your life. But again, it's all just wee things that you could put in place, and they build up and create a superstructure, if that's the right word.
It's just figuring out the shit that we're doing. Is that what's best for us? And the people that are advising that we do this stuff and eat this stuff and buy that stuff, what is their interest in us? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to come across like, I've got my tinfoil hat on, on the sofa, saying it like the aliens are going to come and get us. It's not that, but it's like we live in a very difficult age where there's lots of agents who are not acting within our best interests that have a massive say in what we do and what we don't do. And I go back to the Coca-Cola thing. It's like, I don't think anyone needs Coca-Cola. It's maybe a nice thing to have from time to time as a treat, right? But it's just understanding that it's not a daily need. It's not a daily requirement. It should be something that's taken very occasionally as a pleasurable treat, right? But I don't think a lot of us think like that way, myself included at times. Like when I was in America, I thought it was great. You go to America and you go to a restaurant and you order like a Dr. Pepper or a root beer or something like that, and it's refillable. And
it's almost free as well.
Yeah. And it's cheaper than a lot of bottled water, and there's a reason for that. But anyway, and so you drink half your Coke at the table and they'd whip it away and go and fill it up and put it back. And it's like, and we think that's great. And then you go to a restaurant and you gauge in the quality of a restaurant by how much food you take away from it. And you think that's great. And it's like, it's not. So there's like, we're in this difficult position where there's all these things, we're kind of being bombarded with lots of different things, and it's very difficult to do the right thing. And I think with fasting, what I'd probably say to people who maybe don't want to do it or roll their eyes at it is try it and see what happens, because it'll, if nothing else, it saves you money, right? Because you probably I never really did this so much, again, because I try and be tight with money. But people that I've worked with, they'd order lunch out every single day. And that's expensive, So you're having your breakfast at home, and then you're going to work and you're buying lunch at a shop every single day. And then maybe you're tired or whatever, so you'll get you get dinner on the way home. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so there's different ways to do it. You mentioned skipping breakfast, because if you go to bed at 10 p.m., right, and then you wake up at 7, that's 9 hours of a fast already. So if you take
most of it, you've slept through, and it's so easy.
Yeah, and then you take breakfast out, and let's say you eat at 12. You've got a decent chunk of time there where you're fasting anyway. So it's only a hop, skip, and a jump to doing something bigger. And if nothing else, and going back to the hobby, you could for like a month not eat lunch, right? And you're getting a little bit more of a fasting. Say if you skipped your breakfast and you're saving money on your cereal or your oatmeal or whatever your toast or whatever, and then you're not buying lunch anyway, you save yourself a bunch of money. So if nothing else, you do that, and you won't die. Your body won't start eating itself. And I found, and everyone is different, and some people have said to me, I get so angry if I don't have my breakfast, my brain just can't function. And that's fine. Like you will eat your breakfast then, because everyone is different. But what I found is fasting, once I've got into it, like I won't lie, like after Christmas, I did a 3-day fast with only water, right? And it was hard because I also gave up caffeine as well at the same time. It was hard to kind of chunk through those first 3 days. I think a lot of it was caffeine withdrawal. But after those 3 days, it felt amazing in many, many ways. And like I said, I mentioned that I just felt like I would wake up and be ready to face the day, whereas previously, and it's very complicated. There's, kids' sleeping patterns and stuff like, and one of them as well. But I just felt I was waking up with so much more energy, and I saved money, which goes back to the snake oil salesman. It's like a lot of these things, like, oh, you pay this, or you pay $50 a month to go to the gym. It's like you don't think you need that, and if you need to get the gym membership to go and be fitter and healthy, that's fine, do it. But I never really do that. The idea that I'm doing it and it saves me money is brilliant. It's an extra reason to do it, right? So I'd say people that are unsure about fasting, try it. Just see what happens with it, because it's been massive. It's been massive for me, and it's an easy thing for me now, and it's a little win. It's something that fits into my daily life, and then at the weekend, I can do what I want. What I've also noticed, yeah. But what I've actually noticed is, even more, I'm starting to abstain from things because I'm like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, Or like what I'm doing at the moment is that because I'm on holiday, I'm eating whatever I want, but I'm only trying to break my fast once per day. So it's like I'm going out and eating, at restaurants and things like that, and I'm choosing whatever I want, but I'm only breaking my fast once. Mm-hmm. So I've given up like tea, which is hard for an Englishman, giving up tea, because I always have milk. I always have milk in it. That's been hard. But it's just this idea that I'm only going to break my fast once. So that gives me, going back to what you said about autophagy. So basically, when you eat, your insulin level rises, and you're storing, you're moving energy into your cells, and you're storing energy, and then you're obviously processing all that food, and then what happens is your insulin level drops, and when your insulin level drops, all these other chemicals come out to play, like this human growth hormone, for example, which is really positive for us. And there's all sorts of different things that happen when insulin is not present in our bloodstream as much. And it just gives you your whole body a rest. I think we've all done that. You probably ate like a pizza or ate like, a burger, and you got like proper distended belly, and there's a whole bunch of like just inflammation. Like it's like lots of things that we have and lots of chemicals that we have. A little bit like a cigarette, we know that now about cigarettes, that cigarettes are really bad for us. It's kind of the same thing with certain foods that have got loads of chemicals in. It's like, they're not good for our body. We're not designed to have those chemicals. And those chemicals have been put in there to create a reaction in our brain that make us feel amazing for a short period of time, a little bit like a drug. And that's why they sell it, so sugar, for example, creates a really positive feeling in our brain, and our brain wants it, which is why we have cravings for chocolate and different things, but it's not good for us. And those chemicals have been created to sell a product to us that we think is great, but they're not actually great. And it's really hard to get out of it. And I'm still not out of it, because it's hard, because we live in a world where these things are so freely available, and it's so fascinating, man. It's brilliant, isn't it? I really like how liberating it is. How you just don't. I feel like I'm just not a slave to stuff. I'm just not a slave. You're good.
The good thing about it is it's a thing that you don't have to do. A lot of this is a thing that we're not telling you have to do anything, but you know what I mean. Fasting. Yeah. It's a thing you don't have to do. And, you can, why not, if you're in the position to do this, have a week where you skip breakfast, and the time you'd be having breakfast, go and paint some miniatures and come back, email us after the challenge and see how much you got painted that week instead. I think as well with the fasting, again, we don't want to come across here like we're absolutely perfect, because we're definitely not. And I have weekends very regular. Yeah. Like I'll kick the arse out at beer on Friday, big day out on Saturday, recovery day on Sunday with a few beers and a takeaway. So what I'll tend to do, maybe a Monday, I'll just try and eat as best as I can, and then what I'll do, maybe a 40-odd hour fast. You would want to do the sort of intermittent fasting before you jumped into something like this. But I'll have my dinner, my tea on a Monday night, and then I won't eat all the way through, so I've got my overnight, I've got all day on Tuesday, and then I'll get up in the morning on Wednesday, again, miss my breakfast. You're not as hungry as you would think when you wake up. You're not hungry at all. And then lunchtime, so that gives you sort of 40-odd hours, and you honestly feel at that point like you've been living really well for weeks. And in fact, it was only 70-odd hours ago I was munching a bit of haggis pakora and drinking some Buckfast tonic wine. So
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think you got to try. I think that's the key with these things, right? With exercise stuff, it's not. Don't listen to someone who's saying, only have cabbage soup for a month and do an hour's worth of high intensity interval training every day. Like it's not something that's going to stick. They say that in the north of England a lot. Like it's got to stick. It's got to be something that sticks, right? And that's the key, is you got to find something that sticks. And so my intermittent fasting routine has come from trying it, figuring out that it seems more natural for me to do that. I don't feel worse. I only feel better. And it's got only positive things, and tinkering around with it. That's the key, is tinkering around with it and making it work for you, making something that fits in for you. So for me, I always want to have a meal with my family when I get home from work. So it makes sense to keep that as my eating window. But that's the thing, is that you just got to try it. Just try it and tinker around with it and just find something that works. And just be very careful of the advice that you're getting from people, ourselves included. Just taking everyone's advice or everyone's know-how or something that's worked for everybody else, taking it and saying, well, that's worked for them. I've got to find my own way with it, and I've got to find my own thing with it. But I think in general, only eating once per day has had a massive positive impact on every single aspect of my life. I won't say it's like a miracle cure. It's not a silver bullet. It's not just that, but it's about balancing that, being a boring bastard and being disciplined, and even just going to the mental side of it, just abstaining and saying, well, I could do that, but I'm not going to, is really positive. But then also usually abstaining from something and then going, you know what, I will. That's good as well, because it's like I think we just got too used to the treats. The treats have become the norm, when really a treat is something you have very, very rarely, very occasionally, and that's what makes it good, because you only get it every so often,
Final thoughts for me on the fast, and I just wanted to mention, to me, it's, and to most people that do this, it's certainly not about calorie restriction or deprivation. So in my eating window, I'll have huge meals and I'll eat till I'm full. I won't deprive myself of anything. And I've even heard nutritionists say this, that even if you did just eat in an 8-hour window and your diet was pretty rubbish, you're still getting a lot of benefits of fasting. Even if you're not eating very good food in that 8-hour window, you're still doing better than most people. So there's so many different. You could go as deep or as shallow into this as you want, or not at all.
Yeah, and this, I think this is the key for this chat, is that this isn't designed to be like, do this, do that, do that. This should be like a door that opens another door. For individuals to find their own way with it, and we got a whole bunch of extra reading that people can go and look at and go and get involved with if they want to, which we all should, I believe. But yeah, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's like, I don't have the most perfect diet, and I'm trying to. I probably did about 3 kilos. I'm trying to get rid of, but I've tried to kind of make sure that downward curve is a gradual one. So I'm not, because the thing is, and I think we've all probably tried eating a little bit better or going on a certain diet in the past for various different reasons. I do these things. I won't say that it's not for fun. It's not for fun, because a lot of them aren't fun, but I do them just to see what happens. So with a high intensity interval training, loads of people have talked about insanity training, and I'd never really done it. So I just did it just to see what happened. And then, I've been on a keto diet. I've been on these different things just to see, just to see what happens. And what I found, because with my Fitbit, I've got a Fitbit dashboard thing that I can track all my body weight every single day. I've got a Bluetooth scale, so I stand on the scale and it automatically updates my Fitbit dashboard and stuff like that. It's just interesting to see what happens to your body, just to so you can see, if you make small adjustments, what happens. And then I'm like, is the benefit that I'm getting from this worth the sacrifice? Does that kind of make sense? And so this is years of me, at least 5 years, just tinkering around with stuff and seeing what happens. And it's really important that you don't have to have the most perfect diet, but that's not to say that you shouldn't have a better diet. I need to. So I'm in a process of intermittent fasting down to a plateau where I can eat what I want, but I'm not losing any more weight. And then I am in a process of, and me and the wife are both doing this, is getting rid of processed foods, definitely during the week, Monday to Friday, and just eating things that just naturally occur in their natural state, that we're not fucked around with and messed around with, or a company has just like injected loads of stuff into it. And people have a big go at Jamie Oliver, right? Jamie Oliver is like a TV chef in England, in the UK, and people have a go at him for doing stuff. But I remember watching a program years and years ago where he was talking about this subject, and he was one of like looking back, he was one of the people that were key advocate of this. He was talking about like a sausage roll, and on his show he had like a butcher in, and Jamie Oliver made 2 sausage rolls. A sausage roll, for people that aren't from England, it's like kind of like a puff pastry wrapped around a sausage, so like a hot dog kind of thing, but that's kind of what it is. And he said he made one. And then he made one how a mass-produced company would make one. So his one that he did was like sausage meat, pastry, which is just butter, flour, bit of salt. Here's what's in the sausage. It's like 80% pork, and the pork comes from cheek and this and that. It's offcuts basically, and then it's topped up with fat. And then there's a few breadcrumbs in there that hold it together. And it was very simple. I think it had like 7 ingredients, this sausage roll. And he said, listen, sausage rolls aren't healthy. You shouldn't eat them all the time. But this sausage roll has got 7 ingredients. And then he made a second one, which was like he'd just taken from the packet, and someone else, like this professional came in, and it was like, right, okay, so this is only 30% pork. And then you've got to put this in. But the problem with putting this in is it makes it really dry. So we've got to put loads of water in. But then there's loads of water in it, so we got to put this in. And it was like, honestly, about 50 different ingredients. And so it was like, right, if you're going to eat a sausage roll, we don't recommend you eat too many of them because that's not good for a good diet. But if you're going to eat a sausage roll, it's probably best to make it out of actual ingredients, because all these chemicals and things like that, it's like your body doesn't know how to deal with this. It's not designed to deal with this. It's like you're putting poison into it. And what you're saying about making your body work well, it's like our body is great. It puts up with a lot of stuff. It's like driving a car and putting really shit petrol in it, and then your engine starts like cracking and banging, and you just turn the radio up so you can't hear it, and keep on putting terrible petrol into it, and at some point it's going to break down, and a car's engine will do a great job of trying to work, and your body's the same. It's trying to work, and then it just stops, and it'll break, and you'll have type 2 diabetes, or you'll have a heart attack. And it's about understanding that maybe you need to put that better fuel into it. So yeah, you can have a poor diet when you're doing intermittent fasting, and I won't claim that my diet's amazing, but I think it takes a long time to tinker around with it and move things around. And we haven't really talked about satiated foods, or foods that make you satiated, that genuinely make you feel full for a long period of time. That isn't something that's going to make you feel full for about an hour, and then you're going to be in the same state again another time. It's very, very complicated, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, like we talked about carbs being akin to the paper on the fire, and for the record, I'm not saying that carbs are bad. You do need carbohydrates, and there's really good sources of carbohydrates. Like sweet potato is one of my favourites. I wanted to touch on fats too, because that's a controversial, again, that's a whole scenario of its own. But fat gets a bad rap because we equate eating fat with getting fat, which isn't 100% true. In fact, it's not even nearly true, because like any other macronutrient, there are good fats and bad fats. Like I have a lot of fats in my diet, but I'm not fat. So I'll have things like olive oil, coconut oil, grass-fed butter. You get the Kerrygold here, which is really good. MCT oil, which is a kind of coconut oil. And I cook with avocado oil, which you can use at a really, really high heat, and it doesn't go rancid or toxic or anything like that. Because for what I've read and what I've heard over the years, like the worst source of fats is these they're called vegetable oils, but they're really just like highly processed seed oils. So like sunflower, canola, there's a few other ones, but unfortunately these things are so cheap that they're just in everything, or in every processed food that you buy. If you go out to a restaurant, it's going to be in there, so you'll never avoid it. But again, back to the football team, win most of your games, you'll do all right in the league table. Yeah,
and that's the thing, we'll keep on bumping into this, is we don't want to make it like a boring lecture thing. And equally, we don't want to come across like we're saying, like preaching to people. It's not that. It's just maybe it's realizing that we're a product of a certain environment. And in my opinion, that environment doesn't have our best interests at heart. in my opinion. Like, so if you take, it's like business, right? The business is good in some ways, and businesses are great. You know, they provide a service or they provide a product that people want. But it's dangerous, because if you think about what a business's main aim is, it's to make money, right? That's what a business fundamentally needs, to make money. Otherwise, it's not a very successful business, right? So, and that's leaked into every aspect of our life. I'm not saying that, you know, capitalism's terrible. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's about, like, if you take like a McDonald's burger, it's designed to be profitable, right? And you need to look into, how do people make a burger profitable? That's a journey that you need to go into. That's something that you need to figure out, because I could tell you my opinion, but that doesn't necessarily make it fact for somebody else. And so yeah, there's if the company or a restaurant's got a way of giving you something that is 10% cheaper and yet there's no complaints, then why would the business, air quotation marks, not do that? Like, of course they would, because they can make 10% more money. So yeah, of course they would. But that's not in my best interest. That's not in your best interest. It's in the business's best interest, if that kind of makes sense. And it's hard, because I don't want to come across as, like I said, someone with a tinfoil hat on. But I think we need to be just a little bit more aware about what the intended aim is for these businesses that we're interacting with on probably a daily basis, right?
Yeah, and it ties in this sort of last thing I wanted to touch on, because it's January time of recording, and the amount of leaflets I've had through the door from Domino's Pizza and stuff like that, and they're all doing they've jumped on the veganuary thing, and I wanted to kind of touch on the fact that a lot of people, their instant reaction, you know, I'm going to eat better. Should I be vegan? Should I be vegetarian? And what I would say, again, from my personal understanding, is it's not really about that. Like, none of these diets alone could make you healthy or unhealthy, because there's very good ways of doing them and very bad ways. If you're eating vegan out of McDonald's, that's going to be some of the most highly processed food. It'll be laden with pesticides and stuff like that. Not good for the environment. So, you know, they don't pigeon your whole into one of these diets unless it's for ethical reasons or moral reasons, or you know, that's something you want to do. But there's no, you know, you're not going to automatically get healthy by being veggie or vegan. Sometimes you could get more unhealthy, you know, especially if you're vegan and you're struggling to get good sources of protein in. So there's a lot of nuances there.
There's like the Beyond Meat burgers. Have you seen those? The Beyond Meat burgers?
Yeah.
They're not great for the environment, and it's a highly processed food, you know, and things that are highly processed aren't good for us in general, because our body isn't designed to deal with those things. It's, you know, it's something that I'm only fairly recently starting to really take a big interest in. It's stuff that I kind of like bumped into. I eat meat, and one of the worst things I ever did is when I was a kid. During the summer, I used to work on a farm. I used to think it was amazing, because it was like everyone wanted to work on this farm because it had a butcher's shop attached to it. So like, you didn't really get paid very well, but you just got amazing lunches. So like every single day you'd be getting like, you know, fillet steak and chips for lunch, because it just had the butcher's shop attached to it. And so it was like proper, like, you know, gold level summer job working on this farm. And so one day I took like they had sheep, they had cows and things like that. I took a whole bunch of sheep down to the abattoir, and just watching the sheep get processed. And it was the worst thing that I kind of ever did, is like seeing the look in animal's eyes when it's, you know, it's killed. And things like that. It's like we have these blinkers on, don't we? We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know how our food is processed. We don't know how it's been treated and things like that. And it's like, I think if the majority of us knew what life that animal had, and we knew what effect that we were having on the environment and stuff, I don't think we would eat it. don't think we'd eat it. You know what I mean? But I still do. Like, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect, but we do it because it's just we're accustomed to it. It's like we just don't ask any questions. You know, you see like the KFC chickens, and you see, you know, all these animals that get pumped with antibiotics and they get fed. They just take like a cat. You mentioned grass. Yeah. You mentioned grass-fed butter there. So it's like cows are made to eat grass. That's what cows should eat, grass. But the problem with grass is it's expensive to feed a cow grass. So they don't. They feed them these other things. And then the cow is eating highly processed food that it's not meant to eat. And then it's being pumped with these growth hormones so it grows quicker so they can make more money. They got antibiotics in them because they're getting really sick because they're not eating the things that are supposed to be eaten, and they're not walking around and doing all the things that cows should be doing. And then we're consuming all that negative stuff. It's a little bit like, you know, a few years ago, people getting antsy about like microparticles, like the plastic microparticles, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
So the problem is that all the microparticles that you have in like shower gel scrubs and things like that were going down the drain. That was going into the sea. The fish were eating the plastic particles, and then people were eating the fish, and then you're getting like loads of plastic in our bodies. That's what happens, right? So all the things that the cow is eating is concentrated within the cow's cells, and you're eating the cow's cells, and then you've got all that stuff that's concentrated within a cow, and that's how people get like, you know, mercury poison, right? There's like a certain amount of mercury in the sea or something like that, and then a fish had the mercury, and then it's only small trace amounts, but then you eat loads of sashimi and salmon and things like that, and you end up getting mercury poisoning because you're eating all the stuff that's like a natural cycle of how things happen, both good and bad. So if you got a cow with a really great diet and it's really fit and it's really healthy, like back in the day you say chicken was really healthy because like the chickens were like having a great diet and they were really fit and really active. Well, it's not the case anymore because we're keeping in these giant fucking sheds with like thousands of them. They can't move around and they're only living for a few weeks until we pot them. It's just like it's we all need to kind of wake up to all of these different things, right? And we need to actually realize that lots of horrible, bad things are happening to make money, but that's not helping us at all, and it's not making us feel good. It's not making us, you know, live well. It's not making us, you know, all these different things. And it's it reminds me of a film. I think it's called The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that one about social media?
No, I deliberately avoided it just so I didn't get more wound up about social media than I do already.
Let's not get involved in that. But the key thing was like at the end of it. So they speak to all these executives from like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, and ex executives from these social media things. And one of the questions at the end that really resonated with me is they asked this, like, you know, executive from Facebook. It's like, do you let your children use social media? And he was like, hell no, straight away. He's like, no. And so it's like with all this diet stuff and things like that, it's like, you know, we think we just need to be a little bit more aware about what we're putting in our bodies. And it's a gradual thing. It takes a long time. But going back to like this kind of Beyond Meat burgers and all that kind of stuff, it's like, you just don't have either. You know, it's like if you really want the sausage roll, make the sausage roll yourself with the ingredients that you know and the ingredients that you know that you've put in there. So it's still not healthy in terms of your diet, but it's healthier than leaving those decisions in the hand of a company whose main intention is to be profitable as opposed to making you something that's you know, actually healthy for you. I don't know. But it's very complicated, right?
Yeah, quite literally food for thought in that big section of the podcast. So yeah, moving on. So we've covered the two main components of all this, I would say. You know, the movement and exercise, and then the food and nutrition. A wee bit on supplements here. I was interested, Dan, do you take any supplements as a rule?
I don't at the moment. I have done at different times, but I won't lie. There's no supplement that I've had that I felt had a genuine positive impact on anything. Nothing noticeable. I'm not saying that there wasn't, but nothing notable. So for a long time, I took like a multivitamin, especially when I started fasting. So when I started fasting for the first time, there was a concern that I might not get as the vitamins and minerals that I needed. So I started taking a supplement. And then obviously you need to have a frame of reference. So I stopped taking that vitamin and I didn't feel any negative impact. So I'm not taking anything. This is since I started fasting seriously for the last time. So the last kind of 4 weeks, I haven't been taking anything, and I've not noticed any negative impact. How about you?
Yeah, well, there's first and foremost, there's a solid argument that supplements shouldn't be necessary if you're eating a balanced enough diet, and if you're living naturally, I suppose. But the counter argument to that is, well, I'll be upfront. Like, I take 2 as a rule: vitamin D and magnesium. And the reason that we don't really get enough magnesium typically is just because of the soil and the way food's grown. You know, even if you're eating good food, good whole food, the way that a lot of farms work, they don't rotate crops and stuff like that. The soil's very diluted, so we're just not getting the levels of magnesium in our foods that we should be. And I've read multiple places magnesium is responsible for something like 500 to 600 biochemical processes in your body. So if you don't have enough of it, that's a lot of stuff that can't get done. So that's something that I take. I take it quite near to bedtime, just a couple of wee capsules. You get body sprays as well. Less chance of getting shitty underwear because it could be quite laxative if you take too much.
Is it?
Yeah. When I got COVID, I dozed up on magnesium and I was on the pan a lot, but I got better really quickly. So so magnesium, I make sure I take a wee magnesium supplement, and then vitamin D as well. I think this is something that so many people are deficient in for a number of reasons. Like, if you live in the northern hemisphere, there's just a lot of time where the sun isn't really out, and plus we live and work indoors as well. We don't see the sun a lot, so try and get as much vitamin D from the sun as you can. But I certainly take that wee extra vitamin D supplement. It's allegedly very good for anything from your immune system, your bones, your muscle, and heart health, everything like that. So,
and would you say that? Can you remember a time where you didn't take them? Do you feel, even if it's just a placebo, do you feel that those are actually benefiting you in some way?
It's really hard to say, because if I listed down the things I'm doing that are quote unquote positive, there's a lot of them. So it's a stacking effect. So it's very difficult to say this thing is working. And to be honest, vitamin D is almost free. You know, you're almost stupid not to take it. I know you're not taking it, but you're stupid. But it's nearly free. So taking it's a no-brainer. Again, I'm not giving medical advice here. Please do your own research. But
this is an important thing, because you seem to be pretty clued up on this sort of stuff, and you take a very active role in this. Like, how do you feel on a daily basis? If you feel like you got lots of energy, you feel like you kind of, you're mentally alert. Talk to me about your general feeling day to day.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to present a picture of glory here. I struggle as much as anyone else with all the things of life. Things get me down, and there are good and bad days. But I'd say in the main, what I do is really working well for me. It helps me to be able to enjoy things, whether that is the hobby, whether it's spending time with my family, my wee daughter. And having certainly energy is not something I struggle with at all. I've got plenty of energy, which I'm grateful for, and attribute it to probably just all the wee things that I'm doing.
Because that's an important thing to have as a kind of takeaway in terms of like a tangible thing. Is this idea, like, you've got to feel something, And there was a time, like, before I started fasting, where I felt just like really tired, really sluggish, really unhealthy, like low level of energy, and it was like I'd kind of attributed it to like just getting older, It's like, it's just maybe this is just getting older and things like that. But it's only after, like, you do things or try and change things, and it's about this kind of like, I can't remember the term that you used. It's like the stacking thing. It's like you're doing little things which don't take that much of it's not too much of a bother, but it's worth it. It's worth doing that. So it's like, maybe you take your vitamin D out, you wouldn't necessarily feel any worse, but it stacks on other things. And it's like a big thing for me is, like, I remember saying to my mum, like, a lot, she's really tired. It's really tired all the time. And it's so big that it's one of the reasons why I don't live in England anymore, because it's just fucking grim. Like, the weather was just grim, and it's just like it's pissing down all the time, and it's grey, and it's like, just it doesn't make you feel good. Whereas like today, it's like, it's winter, but it's like 20 degrees and it's nice sunshine. It just makes you feel better. So maybe the vitamin D kind of helps with that. Like, you're just making you feel a little bit better. It's interesting, man. And what about sleep and stuff? Have you got like a set sleep routine? Do you kind of, you're very strict with your sleep?
Yeah, one of the very first things I got a handle on when I got interested in all this was sleep, because I'd went from an outdoor manual job to a computer job, for lack of a better term. So my sleep took a hit for multiple reasons because of that. And the thing that works for me these days is just, I know you don't even use a phone yourself, and I use it very lightly, but like I'm not looking at that phone probably after about 6 p.m. So that's the end of like any screen time for me. And I've got these like blue light glasses, just like a normal pair of reading glasses for lights around the house and stuff like that. So yeah, a little bit Clark Kent when I'm walking around.
You're 90.
But yeah, when we get the kid to bed, and we're in bed pretty early at the same time every night, and just read. I've like to read. I read a lot of books, so just got a nice routine at night, and that for some reason just gradually helps you. The minute I hit the pillow when we put the light out, I'm away to sleep, and
it's really important. Sleep, like sleep, is super really important. Like I've really noticed this since having kids. So like I only really genuinely realized how important it is for me to have a certain amount of sleep. And I've noticed that not being able to have, because I've never been really big, like a big party animal or whatever. And I've like you, I really enjoy reading. So, on any normal week, I'll be in bed like 8:30, 9, and I'll be reading for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I'll be going to sleep. So like 10 p.m, I'm regularly asleep, at 10, like, actually going to sleep or asleep at 10. And when I have that sleep, that you talk about something that's like, it's free. It actually probably saves you money because you're going to bed early or whatever. You're not out drinking beers or whatever. That's been a massive bonus, a massive plus to me. And it's only recently, touch wood, I'm very vigorously touching wood here, that I've started to get back into a regular sleep routine and getting genuinely deep sleep. And that has had a massive effect on my mental health, my social health, my physical health. Just having that amount of sleep and that routine, it's like. And it's so complex and deep to talk about because I think there's so many aspects of it, of the ritual of it. We're not even talking about chemical processes or the need to be lying down for certain chemical processes to kick in. I forget what it's called. What's it called? There's something cycle.
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. All that kind of stuff, and about how you wake up and the importance of daylight in your wake up and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very deep. But in terms of just feeling well rested, I mean, blue light, anecdotally talking about blue light, is that blue light has a certain effect on our brains, and if we're having a lot of blue light before we go to sleep and our brain patterns, it's harder to go to sleep, and sleep eludes us potentially because of this blue light. So you got the special bins that you wear when you're looking at your screens and stuff like that, so that light's not affecting your brain. But sleep is something that's really important for all of us, and yet again something that we maybe miss, and I get why. I mean, for me personally, it's like I spend a lot of time working, so I want to wring as much time as I can out of my personal life as possible, because it's like, well, I'm working from like 8 a.m. to like kind of 5 p.m. And I want to, get home, and I've got I want to make the most of that social time and that leisure time. I don't want to waste it sleeping. But the thing is that sleep is so important to us, and it has a massive effect on every aspect of our life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's the most important thing you could do, I guess, is get a good night's sleep, or at least try and put some stuff in place to make it easier for you to do so. It's something that I've as listeners to the podcast know, we've got a wee girl. She's 6 months now, so sleep has eluded us for a few months. It's starting to settle down now, but it's been important to try and get as much of it as we can. But again, it's not about trying to get 9 hours a night or anything like that. A good solid 6 hours of quality sleep is much better than lying in bed for half of your 24 hours, isn't it? So
it's just interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
What about I wanted to touch on just we've talked about like modern life and stuff like that. So to put it like this, like it's very easy for us to remain in constant levels of comfort at all times. We've got things at the touch of a button. If we're a bit cold, we could turn the heating up slightly. There's a lot to be said, I think, for sometimes being uncomfortable. I think that it's good in lots of different ways, physically, psychologically. One sort of famous example of that is just cold exposure, and that could be something as simple as like you're slightly cold in the house, you go and put the heating on. Well, just don't. Just see for the next half hour what happens if you don't turn the heating on and you're just slightly cold. Like, your body will adapt, and your body relearning to do those, because we've done this for hundreds of thousands of years. Our body's very adaptable, but if we don't let it adapt to things, it just never does it, and we kind of lose that ability to regulate ourselves. One of the things that I do every week morning, I give myself the weekends off. I get up in the morning, I do a cold shower, and it was initially really hard to get into that habit, but going into the cold water for 3 minutes, it was something I learned about Wim Hof, who we'll talk about in a second. Have you heard of Wim Hof?
I have. I don't know why. I thought he was a Dutch striker, but no.
Yeah,
sure you're going to tell
he signed him on Champman in 1995. Yeah, Wim Hof. They call him the Iceman, and I think he's got all sorts of world records where he sat in ice baths and stuff. So his stuff is extreme. Like, he's been away up Everest in shorts and stuff like that. So that's definitely above and beyond what most folk are going to try and do. But a bit of cold water exposure, and I live near the sea as well, so I try and get in the sea sometimes.
What I understand. Yeah, what I understand about that, like, I've been playing sport at a decent level. How I've got involved in like ice baths and things like that is this idea of vasodilation and vasoconstriction, right? So when you're running around, you're getting hot, your blood vessels dilate, and it allows more fluids to be distributed around the body, various different means, and that's also the same with your lymphatic system. Like, you're hot, like the everything relaxes and the fluids travel more freely around the system. But then if you get suddenly very, very cold, you get vasoconstriction, which basically means that all the vessels kind of tighten up. And so it's a good idea if you're playing decent level sport in terms of recovery and like redistribution of chemicals and things like that around the body, is that everything is relaxed and there's more chemicals, especially in terms of like lactic acid. Lactic acid builds up in the muscle, which is bad. And then you suddenly jump into an ice bath, and then vasoconstriction occurs, which where everything tightens up, and then all that fluid is redistributed around the body in different ways. So does it link to that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. So it's a lot to do with sort of the heart health and just the reaction it has on your body. Your body's adapting as well to the cold. It's it's saying to itself, we're going to have to do something about this. We're going to have to. So it's moving stuff about your body, your lymphatic system, and all of that. So I would encourage folk, if you go on YouTube and just look for Wim Hof, you'll find a lot on the cold water, and then his other tenet is really the breathing as well. He's got this great breathing technique. It's again, look them up yourself, and you could decide if you want to try it out. But it's sort of 30 deep breaths in and out, and then you do a big breath hold, and it's amazing. You could actually hold your breath for 1-2 minutes without air in your lungs. You would think that wouldn't be possible, but look at Wim Hof on YouTube. You'll find loads of his stuff on there. And again, just another wee thing. Not something on its own that's going to change your life necessarily, but just we're talking about stacking. The more wee things that you build in, the better chance you've got. So
I always really struggle with those ice baths. Like, I won't lie, like really, really struggled. So I don't know about that. Like, I might try a cold shower tomorrow and see what happens.
Yeah, the key is not to step right in to the cold. So I think I got this for Wim Hof as well. So it's kind of, you've got the cold water there, and the thought of it is hellish. But get the hands under there. You're rubbing the hands under. Splash on the face. That's not so nice. Get the feet under. So you're letting your body know that this is coming, and then you take the step under. And I would say 20 seconds of my 3 odd minutes under the cold water are really unpleasant. And then after that, your body just gets used to it. And when I compare that to the way I used to wake up 5 or 6 years ago, what I would do, I would wake up, I would have my phone in the room. It would be my alarm clock, which I don't do now. And the first thing I do, pick up the smartphone, let's check Twitter. The world's a terrible place, and there's lots of bad stuff. And you're just lying there thinking, here we go again, another day. I'm in a Twitter argument with somebody. So compare that to now. The stressor in my mornings is cold water, and that's a totally different kettle of fish. It really does set you up for the day as well.
Yeah. So I guess just before we kind of wrap things up and kind of have some takeaways, you mentioned that a lot of stuff, and it's again, I don't want it to come across. I guess it's just because I've bumped into people that are like maybe conspiracy theorists or people that are like, just wake up, man, just wake up. It's like, I'm not trying to come across in that kind of way, but it's like it's a dawning and continuous realization that you can't. It's like your parents when you're growing up. They do, but you kind of presume that they've got your best interests at heart the entire time, right? So even when they do something that really upsets you and they make you cry or they take your favorite toy away, you kind of believe that there's a greater good that you're working towards. And with your parents, there probably is, right? There probably is. Being a parent myself, it's like it makes you. It's sad to make your kids sad, because you don't want that, but you're trying to lead them towards a greater good. And for me, it's been like this realization. It's quite depressing at the start. Is that no one really actually cares about you that much. Your parents probably do, and I hope that they do. But other than that, there's no one really. And so you kind of think like, oh, the government are looking out for my best interests, or it's like, oh, it's great that KFC have put like the calorie content of the meals up on the menus now. That's great because I can have this 2,000 thing and I can eat this KFC meal as 2,000 calories, but that's fine because my daily intake is 2,000. But you've got to think about what is that based on? What is that based on? It's that the takeaways that we start talking about is going to be like this realization that just get clued up yourself. Figure it out yourself and make your own choice on certain things about whether to do it or not do it based on stuff that you have figured out yourself from having spoken to many different people and read many different things from many different sources over a long period of time. And that's the thing that sucks about it, is that it would be so easy if someone said, right, do this, do that, and you'll live to 120. Happy days. And every day you wake up, you'd have loads of energy and you'll be happy. But unfortunately, it's not like that, is it? It's hard, isn't it? Like having a cold shower every day. I would think that's really hard. Is it? You said it's all right. Is it hard though? The idea of jumping in cold water, man, I don't know. Like
not after a couple of years of doing it. It's just a normal part of your routine, And like I say, I have weekends off, so I can lie in a wee bit. So.
Yeah, but then again, like the idea of eating everything you need to eat in 1 hour is repulsive to lots of different people. So I guess being open-minded is important. But anyway, man, before we kind of give people resources and stuff like that, they can kind of go and look at themselves. Like, so tell me something that you would give people as a starter, like do this tomorrow. Like what would be one small starting point just in one area? What would you say?
Yeah, I guess if you want to do one simple trick, just skip your breakfast tomorrow and see how you feel by the afternoon. All right. That's all I would say.
Okay.
What about you? It'd be fasting. Just do fasting because it's free. It'll actually save you money. And in terms of like I was trying to do this at work about being efficient with my time. It's like, right, if I've got an hour, if I've got a free hour, where am I going to dedicate that hour to have the most possible impact? And I say that fasting has been the thing that's had the biggest impact for the least amount of no monetary input. And it's just taken discipline, which has actually been empowering in many other ways. So yeah, fasting for sure. Yeah, I would say. Cool. So what's next, Dan? Some follow-up resources?
Yeah, go on. So you kind of wrote a few different things. So where have you got your information from for all this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I've read a lot of books over the years, listened to a few podcasts as well. So I've got a wee list of books here. Again, we'll put all the links in the show notes. I'll make a page at bedroombattlefields.com. Let's go /hobby health, all one word. We'll put it all there. So books called Sleep Smarter and Eat Smarter were really good. There's a book called Fast This Way. There's a book that rhymes with that called Move Your DNA. Good book called Why We Get Sick. And Wim Hof's book, I think it is just called The Wim Hof Method. And there's a couple of podcasts I really like too. The Model Health Show and How to Not Get Sick and Die, which is a really good name. So again, I'll put links to all those in the show notes at bedroombattlefields.com /hobby health, along with anything you want to add to that, Dan.
Yeah, I read a good one called The Pleasure Trap by a guy called Andy Goldhammer, which is actually
that's a great name. Yeah.
So yeah, The Pleasure Trap, The Obesity Code by Jason Fung. And there's two guys on YouTube, which is free, which is obviously what I like as well. Jason Fung, Fung, and then Sten Ekberg. They're both kind of pretty credible guys that talk a lot about intermittent fasting and what happens to your body when you fast and how to do it safely and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a full documentary that I watched just the week actually called Fat Fiction, which links into some of the stuff that you were saying about how we all believe that fat is bad, and we've been sold, fat-free yogurt, fat-free milk, all that kind of stuff. And so it kind of talks about all that kind of stuff, fat fiction. So yeah, that'd be cool, man. And like that's the thing, isn't it? That kind of my part in remarks is one. I hope that even at least one person, even if it's only one person that's taken something from it, that's started their journey. That's the key. Is that I forget what started my journey on this. And obviously you got something that started your journey too. If this can be like the starting point on someone's journey that makes them, feel just happier and all that kind of stuff, then that's a massive win, right? Because that's all we want, really. It's this kind of, it's self-discovery, isn't it? It's kind of knowing yourself and knowing the world you live in and knowing the choices that you have available and how you can, just be happier for longer and more stable, right?
Yeah, I think this is the catalyst. Like 5-10 years from now, you're going to hear girls in their sort of late teens, early 20s, and they're going to say, you know what, I want to bag myself one of those men that paints miniatures, one of those Warhammer players, because they're pretty fit, they're cut, and all these kind of terms. So I think this is the start of that transformation for us as a hobby. We're going to be the men on the walls of that sounds a bit creepy, really, doesn't it? Let's not go down that route. What else have you got, Dan? I heard a rumour that you had a quiz on the go this episode.
Oh, are we going to do this now? No, mate, you need to have a whole separate episode.
Right, so we'll do that on a new episode, yeah.
Do it at a different time. We can finish up with our dad jokes. We didn't do that in the intro, right? We got some dad jokes.
Yeah, we got two each then. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Go on, mugs away. You can go first, mate.
Right, I'll do one first then. Okay. So this dad says to his son, "Yeah, I went to this zoo the other day, and I was really disappointed. It only had basically a single dog in it. That was the only animal there. Yeah, it was a Shih Tzu."
Right, it's a good one. What was it like when past, present, and future met for the first time?
No idea.
Tense.
So the kid says to his dad, what's the most impressive thing about Switzerland, Dad? The dad says, I don't know, son, but the flag is a big plus.
What's the difference between a businessman on a tricycle and a tramp on a bicycle?
No idea.
A tire.
You always fear you won't get them, but you always do.
The dad jokes. Dad jokes are good, man. And now you're officially a dad. You've got to start building them up so you can you can do them, right?
Aye, mortifying your children when their friends come round.
That's the way. That's the way.
Lifelong aim of mine. Yeah, I'm looking forward to those days. So, cool. It's been great. This big old conversation that we've had about hobby health. Like we're saying, not telling you what to do, not trying to encourage you to do anything at all. I suppose this is just an exploration of, here are some things that have worked for us and some resources that you could follow up on. And best of luck with it all, if you're planning on looking into any of it at all.
Yeah, it's important. It's essential, isn't it? It's your life, it's our life, it's my life. It's something that's really, if you're, instead of doing the troll through the Twitter, spend 45 minutes, reading a book on this or watching a video on YouTube about this, that from a credible source, because it's essential, man.
There we go then. That was a big old conversation, wasn't it? On the next episode as well, we're going to get back to talking about playing with our wee men. Quite literally, in fact, because we're talking about 6mm wargaming. So playing with our very wee men will be the topic of conversation there. Like I said in this episode as well, everything we mentioned, links and resources and stuff like that, you'll find them at bedroombattlefields.com/hobby health. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak again on the next one.